It's also important to remember that violence and abuse is not always inflicted by other people. A lot of the time we inflict it upon ourselves, and that might not be extreme cases, but things like negative thoughts and demeaning thoughts, that's self-degradation. So that would be mental and emotional violence against yourself. And also there are so many ways in which us as girls and men in the room are exposed to violence. And so today I'm going to be focusing on the three that I think affects girls the most, are relevant to our theme as well this week and during this conference. And that's violence in the home and violence via any form of technology and international violence, which I am focusing on human trafficking. And so during the orientation on Sunday, we had a few discussions and workshops regarding violence in the home. And I found these particularly interesting because we could all agree that violence in the home is obviously very bad, and that's pretty standard. But what we couldn't agree on is what constituted domestic violence and what constituted as just discipline. And there's a very fine line between them, and it's particularly fine because there isn't a set definition for what is and what isn't. And so we had two girls in particular who were very vocal in our group, and they were on two polar extremes. We had one person saying that everything is violence, and then we had someone else saying that everything is discipline. So like everything that we've talked about this week, all the issues regarding human rights and female rights, we need to find a balance between them. So, for example, we already have had to reach an equilibrium between what is being over-feminist and what is being completely culturally conformist, in order to move forward and discuss these issues. So this is the same deal. We can't say that everything is abuse, but we can't say that nothing is abuse either. So this is probably the reason why we still have cases of domestic violence, because there is no solid definition, and to be honest, it is a very subjective thing. So I don't believe that there will ever be a solid definition. But having said that, we can agree that domestic violence is definitely an important issue that we need to address. Matters of the home are always very subjective and very private as well. We talk a lot about social and cultural conformity. However, within families, we have our own type of subculture that we're expected to conform to, and this is our identity. And therefore, domestic violence, when we remember that violence isn't just physical, is very prevalent. It's an issue of mental and emotional violence. So personally, in my family, we have a very strong identity. All of my sisters are more or less the same. I have three sisters, Miriam, Phoebe, and Naomi. They're all older than me, so I'm the baby. And they are all insanely intelligent. They're all extremely talented, very successful, and breathtakingly beautiful. But if you ever meet them, don't tell them I said that. I will deny that. They're all wonderful role models, and that's to others and to myself. And so I'm extremely lucky. But what I'm going to explain to you, I'm very reluctant to call it mental violence at all. But there's definitely a sense of pressure, because of the success of my family members. And like I said before, we often inflict this pressure and enforce it on ourselves. And so what I try to do to alleviate it is to turn this pressure into motivation. And so my sisters have shown my parents or everyone else that you can do really well by following the path that they've chosen. Well, I'm not exactly the most conventional person. I like to find creative ways to sort things out, and especially at this time, as I'm graduating high school and I have to decide what universities to go to and what to study, this is very much, it's at an all-time high, all this pressure, and it affects you both mentally and emotionally, and positively and negatively. But when it's negative, to some extent, I would call it mental violence. So my case is, not intensely severe, and it's probably more positive than negative. for the most part, because the identity that I'm expected to conform to is actually very positive. But I would be happy to be, intellectual and talented and successful and beautiful like my sisters, and a good role model. But what we need to be extremely careful of in terms of mental and emotional violence within our family is how much pressure we put on others, and also what kind and what the nature is of that pressure.